This revision video is looking at Christian attitudes towards the use of violence and pacifism. Most Christians believe that violence is wrong, because obviously it leads to killing, and that's of course against the Ten Commandments. A lot of Christians will choose to be pacifists, who believe obviously violence is always wrong, should never ever be used. There's a massive, no to violence, and obviously they strive to promote peace in the world. Now, why would they have these views and beliefs about non-violence? Well, they believe there's always a way to solve a problem. And actually, people say that war is a last resort. They say no, it should never be a last resort. There's always a solution, and governments need to work better and more together to try and find these solutions. Good example of a pacifist group, the Quakers. Obviously, the Quakers are pacifist Christians who follow teachings of Jesus and what he said about to love all people. So, of course, how can violence be showing that love? It goes against those teachings. They believe that all violence is wrong, hence why they're pacifists. Christians will turn to the Bible for guidance in this area, and the Bible teaches the need for peace and to aim for peace. And it was Jesus who said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God." And that was in Matthew 5:9. Jesus also taught violence is wrong and gave various teachings on this. One of them was to turn the other cheek, from Matthew 5:39. This is where Jesus said, how do you respond to violence? If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn and offer them the left. Basically show that you're not going to retaliate. What else did Jesus teach? Good example from Jesus when it comes to use of violence was when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and the Jewish soldiers came to arrest him. And Peter, one of his disciples, started to fight with the guards to stop them from arresting Jesus. And Jesus said to Peter, "Stop, put down your sword." He said, "For all those who draw the sword will die by the sword." Basically saying, if you live a life of violence, you're going to die by violence. And it wasn't the answer, so very much Jesus showing a non-violent response to when he was being arrested. Let's stick with Jesus, because there is a slight discrepancy in his belief here when he said obviously violence is wrong, shouldn't be used. There's always kind of a peaceful means to sort the problem out. And that's when he went to the temple, the house of God, his father's house. Now he expected to walk in and see a very calm place where people are worshipping God, dedicating their time to God. But actually what he saw when he walked in was quite a busy, heavily packed marketplace. And what angered Jesus was the fact that people were actually ripping off other people, they were cheating them out of money, and he said, "Why have you turned my father's house into a den of thieves?" And with that, he actually got up and started to smash up the money changers' tables, break all the cages with the animals in that were being sold, and this was known as the incident in the temple. And this led some Christians to believe that actually maybe sometimes violence is needed, it's necessary. Jesus could have just stood up and talked to the people. He didn't. He chose to actually use actions and almost in a violent rage show his anger at what those people were doing in the house of God, in the temple. A lot of Christians, including Church of England and even Roman Catholics, all believe obviously violence is wrong and it should not be used, it should be avoided. But there is a very big however here. They do accept violence in certain circumstances because they believe obviously it is needed sometimes. For examples of war, sometimes war is necessary. They don't necessarily agree with it, but they see the need for it. And of course, another good example would be with examples of defence. To defend yourself, sometimes violence is needed, it is necessary. I suppose that's why they call it the Ministry of Defence. Really good example to use here is Dietrich Bonhoeffer when talking about pacifism and violence. You see, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a pacifist Christian pastor, so he worked in the church, and during the time of the Nazis he actually joined in with non-violent protests against Hitler. When he found out how Hitler was treating the Jews, or should I say the Nazis were treating the Jews, he was very much against that, and he joined in these protests. Now, he soon realised that Hitler wasn't going to listen to peaceful protests. He just wasn't going to stop doing what he was doing. And Bonhoeffer actually changed his beliefs about pacifism. And he developed a belief that violence is evil, but there are worse evils in the world, and sometimes these need to be stopped. And to do that, you need violence. And violence is unfortunately the only way to deal with that. So, completely changed his beliefs from pacifism to the use of violence. Now, other good examples you can bring in here obviously are Martin Luther King, Oscar Romero. Both fought against oppression in a non-violent way, so very much a pacifist beliefs. And of course Jesus, he always taught non-violent means to actually solve problems.